The Merayan Baths, a tale of Nurueti. In the far-flung land of Nurueti, where the sky shimmered with twilight hues even in the day, nestled deep within ancient forests, lay the most secret and revered of places, the Merayan Baths. Known only to spirits, fairies, and other ethereal beings, these baths were hidden from mortal eyes. Here, within the embrace of mystical woods, sacred hot springs bubbled from the earth, their waters shimmering with an inner light, pure and untouched by time. The Merayan Baths were no ordinary place. Legends whispered that the waters sprang from the heart of Nurueti itself, imbued with ancient magic older than the stars. These waters were the purest in all the realms, flowing with a serene grace, reflecting the glow of the moon and stars above. Their warmth was perfect, not too hot, not too cool, and their soothing embrace promised more than just rest. For any creature, whether spirit, fairy, or ghost, the waters of the Merayan Baths held the power to heal the soul. The journey to Merayan. It was said that only those who were called by the ancient magic could find their way to Merayan. For most, it appeared as nothing more than a forgotten glade, shrouded in mist and tangled with ivy. But for those in need, especially those burdened by weariness or cursed with dark enchantments, the way would reveal itself like a path in the clouds. One such spirit, Rial, had wandered the ethereal plains for countless years. Once a great warrior, Rial had fallen in battle, and his soul had been cursed by a dark sorcerer to never rest. His spectral form flickered with the weight of his sorrow, his once proud armor now tattered and translucent. Night after night, he wandered the silent fields of Nurueti, seeking peace but finding none. One night, as he floated near the border of the ancient forests, Rial felt a strange pull. The air seemed to hum with a gentle song, one that he hadn't heard since his mortal days. Curious, and drawn by an unseen force, he drifted deeper into the forest, following a path that had not been there before. As Rial ventured further, the mists parted to reveal the Merayan Baths, nestled within a verdant hollow surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to guard the springs. Faint, shimmering lights danced upon the surface of the water, and the sweet scent of lavender and wildflowers filled the air. Spirits, fairies, and creatures of light glided through the mist, their forms flickering like gentle flames. The sacred waters. At the heart of the baths, a massive stone carved with ancient runes stood sentinel, its surface covered with moss and time-worn inscriptions. This was the source of the sacred waters. From beneath it, a spring bubbled up, its water glowing faintly as it cascaded into the pools below. The sound of the flowing water was like a lullaby, soothing and ancient. As Rial approached the baths, he noticed the spirits of old warriors, fairy lords, and even long-forgotten gods basking in the warm waters, their translucent forms becoming more vivid, more alive. Some sang ancient songs of their homelands, while others simply soaked in silence, letting the magic of the springs wash over them. Rial hesitated, but the pool of the waters was irresistible. He floated closer and gently dipped his spectral hand into the pool. The moment the water touched him, a warmth spread through his entire being, and for the first time in centuries, Rial felt a deep peace. The weight of his curse, the endless sorrow, began to lift. His ghostly form grew clearer, more defined, and his armor shimmered with a new brightness. The waters of Merayan did more than heal the body, they cleansed the soul. All the weariness, all the grief, and even the darkest of curses could be washed away. It was said that those who had been touched by the waters would be free from the burdens of their past lives. A sanctuary for all. Overhead, the stars shimmered, casting their gentle light upon the baths, as the spirits of the dead and the Fee of Nurueti continued to gather. Among them were Yidala, a fairy queen whose heart had been turned to stone by betrayal, and Kalan, a mischievous sprite who had accidentally entangled himself in a curse that caused misfortune to everyone he encountered. Udala, with her once crystalline wings dulled by sorrow, bathed quietly in the deep pool, letting the warmth of the water ease the cracks in her heart. Slowly, the frost that had encased her soul melted away, and her wings once again shimmered with their old brilliance, like sunlight filtering through stained glass. The grief that had weighed her down for centuries dissipated, replaced by a quiet joy she had forgotten existed. Kalan, on the other hand, plunged into the pool with reckless abandon. The curse that had caused mischief and mayhem wherever he went was washed away in the sacred waters, his mischievous nature returning to a playful, harmless one. He laughed with joy as the weight lifted from his small shoulders, splashing the other spirits in the process. Even ghosts, those lingering fragments of lost souls, came to Merayan. Some had been bound to the mortal realm by unfinished business, others by the weight of tragedy or betrayal. Here, they found solace in the waters, their forms growing brighter, their shapes clearer as the curses and sorrows of their pasts were washed away. Some would choose to move on to the afterlife after their visit, while others would linger a while longer, basking in the newfound peace. Guardians of the Baths. The Merayan Baths were watched over by Meral, an ancient guardian spirit, as old as the springs themselves. He appeared as a tall figure, wreathed in mist and shadow, with glowing eyes that radiated wisdom and compassion. Meryl's task was to ensure that the baths remained a sanctuary, a place untouched by the conflicts of the outside world. Occasionally, beings who sought to use the baths' magic for dark purposes tried to gain entry. Meryl's presence was enough to deter most, but for those who persisted, he would rise from the mists and banish them with a single word. For centuries, he had guarded the Merayan Baths, and he would continue to do so for eons more. A place beyond time. The Merayan Baths existed outside the flow of time, a refuge for all who were weary, cursed, or broken. To spirits and fairies, it was a place of rebirth and renewal, where one could let go of the burdens of the past and emerge whole once more. As Rial soaked in the waters, he felt the last vestiges of his curse slip away. His spirit, once bound to the earth by sorrow, was now free. He stood, feeling lighter than he ever had in life, and as he left the baths, he knew he would finally find peace. The Merayan Baths would always remain, hidden from the eyes of mortals but open to those in need. In the land of Nurueti, where magic flowed like rivers and the stars sang ancient songs, this sacred place would continue to offer its healing waters to all who sought it, a sanctuary of peace in a world filled with turmoil. The Merayan Baths, a gathering of spirits and ghosts. The Merayan Baths, once a quiet haven for wandering spirits and magical beings, had grown into a thriving and diverse community. Word of the bath's sacred waters, with their power to heal and restore, had spread far beyond the borders of Nurueti. It wasn't just the cursed or weary souls who flocked there anymore, spirits from all walks of life, from the poorest of forest sprites to the richest of ghostly nobles, now sought its unique pleasures. But, like most things in this world and the next, even peace and comfort had their price. The little spirits of the forest. Not every spirit could afford the luxurious experience of the Merayan Baths. Tiny beings like the forest lanterns and the flower lights, no taller than a human thumb, darted about the forest edges with wide eyes and glowing bodies. These small spirits lived on the fringes of the spirit world, humble and content, though secretly they longed for the warm embrace of the sacred springs. They watched the wealthier ghosts and fairies glide through the grand entrance, coin pouches jingling with ghost coins of various sizes and denominations, ready to bask in the finest pools. For the little ones, the cost of entering the luxurious Merayan pools was beyond their means. But they had found a clever solution. The sacred river that fed the baths meandered through the forest, its waters just as pure, though less concentrated in magical properties than the pools themselves. The small spirits, ever resourceful, gathered around the river's edges, bathing in its cool shallows, content with the joy of the sacred waters that were free for all. Folly, a flower-light spirit with petals of soft violet and a glow that flickered like a fading candle, loved nothing more than to splash about in the river. The water's just as nice here, she would chirp to her fellow lights as they bathed in the shallow streams, and if you close your eyes, you can almost hear the fancy music from the baths. Around them, the riverbank sparkled with the lights of dozens of tiny spirits, their laughter ringing out as they floated and darted in the gentle current. While they lacked the ghost coins to afford the bath's luxuries, their carefree nature kept them light-hearted. But from time to time, Folly would glance toward the grand stone pools of Merayan, where rich ghosts and high fairies lounged in luxury, and wonder what it would be like to soak in such splendor. The wealthy ghosts and their luxuries. Within the Merayan Baths, the scene was vastly different. Here, spirits who carried wealth with them in the form of ghost coins, shimmering and weightless in the spectral hands that held them, would purchase private pools, reserving entire sections of the baths for themselves. These ghostly nobles came from distant places, traveling through the veil between worlds to reach Nurueti. Their lives, and even their afterlives, had been ones of privilege. Even in death, they carried their spectral wealth, gathered from ages past, and they weren't shy about spending it. One such ghost, Lady Merayan, glided into the baths with an entourage of lesser spirits trailing behind her. Merayan had been a noblewoman in life, and in death, her status had only grown. Her ghostly form shimmered with an ethereal silver gown, and her translucent hair floated behind her like mist. She approached Jaya, the bath's five-tailed kite's owner, with an imperious grace, holding out a large, glittering ghost coin. "I'll take the golden pool," Jaya Merayan said, her voice smooth like the wind through autumn leaves. "And I expect it to be filled with lavender essence and the finest moonstone salts. And please, do add that enchanted elixir that removes all lingering regrets. My last session worked wonders, but I could do with a bit more cleansing." Jaya, the clever fox with her 5 tails swishing elegantly behind her, smiled with a sharp-toothed grin. "Of course, Lady Merayan. Your comfort is our greatest priority." The golden pool was prepared with care. Servants, mostly small, lesser spirits that worked for Jaya, flitted about, pouring aromatic oils and magical elixirs into the bubbling water. Soft music began to play, a haunting melody carried by invisible voices, while fairy attendants hovered nearby, ready to massage away any tension from Merayan's ghostly form. As Merayan reclined into the warm, golden-tinted waters, a tray of ethereal treats appeared before her, sweets made from the dreams of mortals, delicate and dissolving in the mouth like mist. Ah, she sighed contentedly. "This is exactly what I needed." Her fellow wealthy ghosts were no less extravagant. Some ordered special infusions, made from the petals of midnight blooming flowers or the rarest fairy mushrooms, said to enhance one's ethereal glow or bestow fleeting visions of one's past life. Others requested massages, using enchanted stones and feather-light touches to knead away centuries of tension from their spectral forms. Songs of ancient lands long forgotten were sung softly to them by fairy minstrels, their voices smooth and calming, like waves lapping against a distant shore. Jaya, the kite-sewn merchant. At the heart of it all was Jaya, the clever kite-sewn merchant who owned the Merayan Baths. Her fox-like form was as graceful as ever, her 5 tails swaying behind her as she moved through the mists of the pools, overseeing every detail. Jaya had always been a sharp businesswoman. She could have had more tails if she wished, a mark of status among her kind, but she didn't care for such things. "I have no need for more tails," she once told a curious guest. "What use are 9 tails when you can have 9 pools instead?" And indeed, Jaya was always expanding, always thinking of how to improve and grow her beloved baths. Her heart wasn't in power or reputation, but in the art of business, and more than that, in the quiet satisfaction of providing comfort and healing to the spirits who came to her. Beneath her fox-like cunning, Jaya had a gentle soul, though few ever saw it. She had a soft spot for the little ones, the tiny spirits who couldn't afford her pools. While she ran a business and had to charge for the full experience, she never begrudged the forest lanterns and flower lights who washed in the river. As long as they didn't disturb her paying guests, she turned a blind eye to their gatherings. But Jaya wasn't just a merchant. She knew the spirits and ghosts who visited her baths needed more than just physical comfort. They needed stories, songs, and the gentle reminder that even in death, life had its pleasures. So, she employed storytellers, fairy musicians, and even illusionists to entertain her wealthiest guests while they soaked. A shared world. Despite the stark differences between the wealthy and the humble, the Merayan Baths remained a place of quiet harmony. The sacred waters flowed not just through the pools, but into the river and beyond, offering some form of healing to all who sought it. Rich ghosts might have their enchanted elixirs and massages, but the small spirits had the joy of the river and each other's company. Occasionally, the worlds would overlap. A rich ghost, curious or amused, might toss a few ghost coins toward the smaller spirits, paying for them to join in one of the lesser pools. The tiny beings would gather, wide-eyed with excitement, giggling as they slipped into the warmed waters, relishing a taste of luxury they could usually only dream of. For a brief moment, in the warmth of the sacred springs, wealth and status faded away, and all were simply spirits enjoying the soothing balm of the Merayan Baths. And so it was that the Merayan Baths continued to thrive, a place where the ethereal world could find peace, comfort, and the gentle reminder that, whether small or grand, all spirits shared the same waters in the end. The special days at the Merayan Baths. In the heart of Nurueti, the Merayan Baths held a rhythm of their own, pulsing with the cycles of the moon, the turning of seasons, and the flow of magical energies. Though spirits, fairies, and ghosts came and went daily, drawn by the allure of the sacred waters, there were times when the baths entered into a state of heightened anticipation, special days, when the very air around the baths tingled with enchantment and rare visitors arrived. Among these special occasions were the most sacred and unique clients of the baths, spirits and creatures so important that the very atmosphere of the baths changed to accommodate them. These days held their own magic, and for the fox merchant Jaya, they were both a challenge and an honor. The arrival of Hutasu, master of all rivers. Once a month, the baths prepared for a very special guest, Hutasu, the master of all rivers, a magnificent spirit in the form of a long, sinuous eastern dragon. His scales shimmered in hues of deep blue and silver, like the very rivers he commanded, and his eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom. Hutasu ruled not only over the waters of the land but also the flow of life and magic that coursed through the rivers of Nurueti, making him a being of immense power and reverence. When Hutasu visited the Merayan Baths, the entire establishment shifted its focus solely to him. Though he always bathed for free, as was his right as the ruler of the rivers, his retinue was vast and demanding. Hutasu never came alone. he brought with him a procession of river spirits, water sprites, and lesser dragons, all needing care and service. These spirits, though not as grand as Hutasu, carried an air of regal grace and expected nothing less than perfection. Jaya and her staff were well prepared for these monthly visits. On the day of Hutasu's arrival, the baths closed to all other spirits. The sacred pools were infused with the finest underwater herbs and rarest riverbed blossoms, offerings meant to please the Dragon Lord and his entourage. The air around the baths seemed to shimmer with moisture, as if the very humidity was drawn from the rivers themselves, enveloping the baths in a gentle mist that cooled the skin but kept the pools perfectly warm. Hutasu's arrival was a spectacle. He never touched the ground, instead gliding gracefully through the air, his long body weaving between the ancient trees that surrounded the baths, his scales reflecting the dappled sunlight. His retinue followed behind, each spirit moving in synchronized elegance. As they entered the baths, the water seemed to hum, responding to the presence of its master. Though Hutasu's visits brought no direct payment to Jaya, the honor of hosting the master of all rivers was reward enough. The bath's reputation flourished because of this relationship, and it was said that those who served the river lord were blessed with abundance in other ways, though Jaya, ever the savvy kitsune, knew well that reputation was a currency as powerful as any coin. For Hutasu, the baths were more than just a place to relax. They were an extension of his domain, a sacred space where he could commune with the waters in a more intimate way. As he soaked in the largest of the pools, his body coiling gracefully through the water, the other spirits of his retinue were treated with the utmost care, massages, enchanted teas, and fragrant oils prepared just for them. For one day each month, the baths were theirs entirely, and Jaya made sure to uphold the sanctity of that arrangement. The cursed spirits in need. Not every special client who arrived at the Merayan Baths did so in a state of grandeur. Some came not out of privilege but out of desperation. Cursed spirits, those bound by dark enchantments, twisted by malevolent magic, or suffering from torments beyond the ordinary, were always granted free service in the baths. This was not just an act of kindness on Jaya's part, but a sacred duty of the baths themselves. One such cursed spirit was Kethera, a fairy queen who had been ensnared by a malicious sorcerer's curse centuries ago. Her once radiant wings had withered, turned to brittle stone, and her body flickered with unstable magic, threatening to tear her apart. When Kethera arrived at the baths, the water seemed to weep for her. Jaya, sensing the depth of her curse, immediately ordered a private pool to be prepared. The cursed pool was hidden deep within the baths, an emergency sanctuary reserved for the most afflicted spirits. Here, the waters were imbued with the most potent healing charms, drawn directly from the ancient spring beneath the stone monument at the heart of the baths. These pools shimmered with an ethereal light, and the very air around them buzzed with the energy of purification. Cursed spirits were ushered here swiftly, no questions asked. Kethera's wings, once crumbling stone, slowly softened as the sacred waters soaked through her being. Over the hours, the curse that bound her began to unravel, the heavy weight of dark magic lifting as the waters worked their miracles. Jaya, watching from the edge of the pool, knew the baths had once again performed their sacred duty, giving a lost soul a second chance. Comfort charms and seasonal magic. The Merayan Baths, though nestled in the open air and along the sacred river, were always perfectly comfortable, no matter the weather. Comfort charms, woven by Jaya herself, hung above the pools and around the grounds, creating invisible domes of warmth that adjusted to the season. These charms acted as invisible umbrellas, protecting the pools from rain or snow and ensuring that the temperature of the water was always perfect. During the colder months, when Nurueti's winters brought a chill to the air, the warmth of the comfort charms was increased, creating a bubble of eternal spring around the baths. Visitors could bathe outdoors, surrounded by the snowy landscape, yet feel nothing but gentle warmth on their skin. The contrast was magical, and it made the winter baths particularly popular among both wealthy ghosts and common spirits alike. The river, too, never froze, its sacred waters immune to the bite of winter. The forest of flying fish. An oddity of the Merayan Baths, and one that added to its enchantment, was the forest of flying fish that surrounded the pools. The fish of the sacred river, nourished by its magical waters, grew to astonishing sizes and developed abilities of their own. Some glowed with a soft light at night, casting an ethereal glow over the forest. Others had learned to defy gravity, swimming not just through the water but into the air itself, gliding above the pools and the trees. On quiet nights, the flying fish would leap from the river and drift through the forest like living lanterns, their luminous bodies casting strange, flickering shadows on the trees. It was forbidden to catch them, of course, but they were often a delightful sight for the guests at the baths. Some of the wealthier ghosts would sit by the river's edge, sipping enchanted teas as they watched the fish glide through the night air, their ghostly forms blending with the otherworldly glow of the magical fish. Other unique features. In addition to these wonders, there were more subtle features of the baths that made them special. Whispering winds, a rare enchantment, allowed the breezes around the pools to carry stories from far-off lands. Guests bathing in the pools could hear faint whispers of forgotten myths and ancient histories, as if the wind itself carried the memories of the world. Spirits often found themselves entranced by these murmured tales, drifting into a peaceful reverie as the winds told them of lives they'd never lived. Another lesser-known feature of the baths was the dream pool, a small, secluded area where the waters were infused with dream essences. Spirits who bathed here would be transported into vivid, otherworldly dreams, reliving moments from their past lives or experiencing fantastical visions of realms beyond. Some came to the dream pool seeking answers, others merely for the pleasure of losing themselves in the strange and beautiful dreams conjured by the water. And so, the Merayan Baths continued to thrive, a place of healing, magic, and wonder, where even the smallest spirit could find joy and the most powerful river dragon could be at peace. For Jaya, it was more than a business, it was her life's work, a sanctuary that catered to both the wealthy and the cursed, the noble and the humble, united by the magic of the waters and the peace they provided.